The universe had certain rules, not the petty regulations that civilizations scribbled down and pretended mattered, but the real ones, enforced by physics, chemistry, and the cold indifference of thermodynamic law. Rule number 1. Some planets existed purely to remind organic life that it was fundamentally a temporary chemical accident. Kirith 9 was one of those planets. Located in the outer terminus sector, Kirith 9 rotated through space like a cosmic middle finger to anyone foolish enough to approach. Its atmosphere consisted primarily of methane ice crystals, frozen carbon dioxide, and what scientists politely called particulate hostility. Average surface temperature, -187 degrees standard. Wind speeds regularly exceeded 200 kilometers per hour. The atmospheric pressure could crush most conventional shelters within 48 hours. The Galactic Habitability Index had classified exactly 4,216 worlds as unsuitable for biological presence of any kind. Kirith 9 held position number 7 on that list. Not the worst, but certainly bad enough that anyone landing there could expect approximately 14 minutes of consciousness before the planet converted them into an organic popsicle. The Ventalian Exploration Guild had marked Kirith 9 with every possible warning. Extreme hazard, no survey recommended, automated monitoring only, and the rarely used pleas for the love of every deity, just don't. The planet had earned these warnings through simple consistency. Everything that landed there died. Scientific probes lasted 6 hours average. The single-manned expedition by the Krellian Empire had resulted in 4 casualties within 20 minutes of touchdown. So naturally, when the distress beacon activated from Kirith 9's southern hemisphere, every rescue coordinator within 3 systems experienced the same reaction: confusion, followed by dread, followed by weary acceptance that someone would have to retrieve whatever frozen corpse had activated emergency protocols before succumbing to physics. Section 2. The Rescue Mission. The Ventalian rescue ship Calculated Mercy drew the assignment through proximity and availability. Captain Zex, commanding officer, possessed all the equipment necessary for body recovery: stasis pods, atmospheric suits, and enough paperwork to document a death in triplicate. Beacon still transmitting, observed Lieutenant Kessler, her sensory stalks drooping. 42 hours now. Power signature suggests portable emergency generator. ZX studied the readouts without enthusiasm. Equipment malfunction. Has to be. Nothing maintains power in those conditions. The beacon identifies the distressed party as human. Single operator. Registry indicates volunteer assignment. He requested this posting. Requested. ZX translator struggled with the concept. That's like volunteering to breathe vacuum. The Calculated Mercy entered orbit 3 hours later. Somewhere below, in frozen chaos, a distress beacon continued broadcasting, and Captain ZX prepared to collect whatever remained of the idiot who'd gotten themselves killed. Descent through Kirith 9's atmosphere felt like being digested by an angry geological formation. The shuttle shuddered as wind speeds hammered against shields. Ice accumulated despite heating elements. The external temperature gauge descended past -100, then -150. Then displayed an error message. Beacons 2 kilometers ahead, Kessler announced. Surface reading shows. She stopped, checked instruments, recalibrated. Captain, I'm detecting a thermal signature. Equipment malfunction. 17 degrees above ambient. Too large for emergency heating. The signature suggests combustion. ZX laughed, because sometimes the universe presented such obvious absurdities that laughter was the only appropriate response. Combustion. On Kirith 9, where there's insufficient oxygen to support fire, where any exposed flame would be extinguished by methane ice in 4 seconds. I'm telling you what the instruments show. The shuttle descended through the final cloud layer. The surface revealed endless plains of frozen methane, impact craters filled with carbon dioxide snow, geological formations shaped by winds that had been eroding stone since before most species crawled from primordial oceans. And beside the beacon's location, impossible and ridiculous, a light source that could only be fire. ZX activated every external camera. Magnification revealed a shelter, crude, improvised, constructed from emergency supplies and optimistic engineering. Heat shimmer distorted the air around it. And outside, protected by some reflective windbreak, actual flames danced in the Kirath 9 wind. "I'm putting us down," Jex said flatly. "Prepare for body recovery." The shuttle landed 30 meters from the impossible fire. External temperature, -173 degrees, wind speed, 190 kilometers per hour. Atmospheric composition, aggressively hostile. And from the shelter, a figure emerged. The being wore a heavily modified environmental suit, layers of reflective material wrapped around the exterior. The figure moved with casual confidence, trudging through methane ice, like someone taking a morning walk rather than exposing themselves to conditions that should induce cellular death within minutes. The figure waved, actually waved, one gloved hand raised in friendly greeting. Kessa made a sound, her species reserved for existential horror. "That's the human." Jex activated external communications. "Unknown contact. This is Ventalian rescue vessel Calculated Mercy. Please indicate if you require assistance." The human's voice came through with the audio quality of equipment maintained through willpower. "Oh, thank the void. I was starting to think my beacon was broken. Marcus Webb, Terran Survey Corps. You guys want to come in? I've got the fire going." Captain Zex had conducted 47 rescue operations during his career. Not once had a rescue subject invited him to warm himself by their fire on a planet where fire could not exist. "You have fire," Jex said. "Yeah. Took me a few days to get it working properly." Marcus Webb gestured toward the flames with evident pride. "Fuel mixture was tricky. Had to synthesize a combustion catalyst from the survey ship's chemical stores, then jerry-rig an oxygen feed from emergency supply. The windbreak took longest. Methane ice makes surprisingly good insulation if you cut it right." Kessa stared through viewports. "The atmospheric oxygen concentration is 0.03%. Combustion requires minimum 14%. "Right. That's why I needed the oxygen feed. Got a whole oxygenation system running. Pull it from electrolysis, breaking down carbon dioxide ice, and filtering oxygen. It's inefficient, but efficiency wasn't the goal. The goal was not freezing to death, and fire seemed like a good start." Jex found himself exiting the shuttle, Kessa following mechanically. The cold hit like physical assault even through environmental suits. Every breath felt like inhaling knives. The wind threatened to knock him horizontal. Marcus Webb stood beside his fire, apparently unconcerned about violating fundamental principles of survival science. Up close, the shelter resolved into desperate engineering. Emergency supply containers formed structural walls, sealed with melted polymer and frozen atmospheric gases. Chemical illumination sticks provided light. A distillation apparatus bubbled quietly, processing ice into water, and the fire burned in a containment ring, fed by tubes connecting to tanks labeled emergency oxygen. Use only in designated survival situations. Designated survival situations. Jex read aloud. "I think this qualifies." That's what I figured. Marcus adjusted something on his oxygen rig, and flames brightened. Had to get creative with fuel. Turns out you can render decent combustible material from organic components if you sacrifice some equipment. That's melted insulation you're smelling. Kessa circled the setup like an archaeologist examining heretical artifacts. The thermal dynamics alone, you're maintaining a localized temperature differential of over 200 degrees. The energy requirements are astronomical. Yeah, I'm burning through supplies at a rate that would make efficiency experts weep. But I'm alive, and alive with fire beats dead without one. Simple math. This isn't simple anything, Chex said. You've built a functioning habitat on a planet classified as fundamentally incompatible with biological presence. Oh, the index. Marcus's tone suggested unflattering opinions. Yeah, I read it. Very thorough. Lots of words like impossible and certain death and please don't. Helpful stuff. Really set expectations. And you came anyway. Volunteer assignment. Someone had to survey the mineral deposits. Everyone else said no, which I understand. This place is legitimately hostile, but I figured, how bad could it be? Kessa made that existential horror sound again. This planet has killed everything that's landed on it. The last manned expedition died in 20 minutes. They also landed in a storm, wearing standard suits with no preparation for specific atmospheric challenges. I spent 6 months preparing, studied climate patterns, engineered specialized equipment, planned supply caches. And when the survey ship's landing gear failed and stranded me here, I had backup plans for my backup plans. Captain Chex had not anticipated receiving a lecture on human survival philosophy while standing on a frozen death world. Yet the universe had delivered precisely that situation. The thing about impossible, Marcus continued, is that it's usually just really difficult wearing intimidating terminology. Take Kirith 9. Everyone says unsurvivable, but that's not accurate. What they mean is unsurvivable using standard protocols designed for marginally hostile environments. Nobody's actually tried surviving here with proper preparation. Proper preparation. Zex glanced at the fire burning through determination and spite. You're describing specialized adaptation that would take generations to evolve, or 6 months, and a stubborn personality. Marcus adjusted oxygen flow. Humans have this thing where we look at environments that should kill us and think, but what if they didn't though? We're not the strongest species, or fastest, or most environmentally resistant. But we're really good at making environments less extreme through bloody-mindedness. Kessa had begun documenting everything. Your oxygen system alone represents engineering innovation that our specialists would require years to develop. Took me 3 weeks, mostly testing. Marcus gestured toward the distillation apparatus. That's water reclamation built from survey instruments and medical supplies. Processes about 4 liters per day cycle, which is barely enough, but makes barely enough sound abundant compared to definitely dead from dehydration. The insulation system uses layered methane ice as thermal buffer, actually more effective than standard materials, because it's everywhere and free. You're using the planet's hostile environment as a survival resource. Zex said, you've weaponized Kirith 9 against itself. Every environmental challenge is also a potential tool if you squint right. Deadly cold, free refrigeration and building material. Toxic atmosphere, rich in processable chemicals. Crushing pressure, free compression for extraction processes. It's all about perspective. Zex watched flames dance in wind that should extinguish them. Your species does this often, deliberately places itself in lethal environments and improvises survival. We have a whole subculture dedicated to it. Extreme environment enthusiasts. Some climb frozen peaks where oxygen is too thin to breathe. Others navigate deserts where temperature regulation alone should induce fatal heat stroke. There's a guy who swam across an ocean channel where hypothermia was guaranteed. He covered himself in protective fat and just kept swimming. That's insane. That's humanity. We're the species that looked at natural selection and said, yeah, but what if we just refused to die instead? It's worked surprisingly well. Lieutenant Kessler had studied adaptive mechanisms of radiation-resistant organisms, thermal regulation of magma-dwelling species, and pressure tolerance of deep ocean civilizations. Not once had she encountered anything resembling humanity's approach to hostile environments, which appeared to be refused to acknowledge hostility until reality gets tired. "Show us the water system," she requested. Marcus brightened visibly. "Sure. Water on Kirath 9 exists primarily as subsurface ice. The extraction process uses thermal probes to melt ice at depth, then pumps it through insulated lines." He led them toward a structure resembling a well designed by someone with engineering knowledge and concerning disregard for conventional methods. The pump runs on fuel cells recharged using solar collection during 30-hour daylight periods. Yes, solar power on Kirath 9 is hilariously inefficient, but hilariously inefficient beats completely without power significantly. Marcus tapped a readout. Daily water production averages 4.3 liters, about 80% of minimum consumption needs. The remaining 20% comes from reclamation. Yes, I'm recycling wastewater. It's exactly as glamorous as it sounds. Jix watched the distillation apparatus bubble away, processing ice through chemistry and determination. The filtration system is a nightmare, yes. Kirath 9's subsurface ice contains enough mineral contaminants to poison most species. Filtration runs through 6 stages: mechanical separation, chemical precipitation, organic breakdown using enzymes from the biological sample kit, activated carbon absorption, membrane filtration, and final sterilization using ultraviolet radiation from a repurposed medical scanner. Marcus rattled off stages with casual competence. It produces water that's technically drinkable, by which I mean it won't kill me immediately. You're drinking water that won't kill you immediately, Kessler said. That's your standard. My standard is alive. Everything else is optimization. Marcus moved to another section where storage containers formed something resembling a laboratory. Food storage uses natural cold as preservation. I brought 18 months of rations for a 3-month mission because planners either overestimate supply needs or were anticipating my survey ship crashing. The storage system consisted of containers buried in methane ice, creating natural freezers requiring zero power. Marcus had marked each with careful notations about contents and consumption schedules. Besides storage, a small hydroponic setup attempted growing something that looked depressed. "You're growing plants," Jex observed. "Attempting to grow plants. Leafy greens, theoretically. The setup uses portable grow lights, recycled water, and what I'm generously calling soil synthesized from organic waste and processed regolith. Success rate has been about 12%, but 12% fresh greens beats 0% by a margin. I appreciate deeply." Kessler examined the hydroponic setup with scientific worldview, experiencing aggressive renovation. The power requirements for maintaining growth-optimal conditions are barely sustainable. Yeah, but humans need vitamin C, and scurvy is really undignified after surviving everything else Kirath 9 throws at me. Pride matters. Plus, caring for plants gives me something besides staring at rocks and contemplating mortality. Mental health is survival infrastructure too. The shelter tour revealed improvisation stacked upon improvisation, waste management from medical supplies, communications array maintaining contact with automated satellites despite atmospheric interference, a sleeping area with layered insulation maintaining survivable temperatures through night cycles. The real trick, Marcus explained, is accepting that comfort is optional but survival isn't. Every human who's ever lived in hostile environments figured this out. You prioritize ruthlessly: water, temperature regulation, nutrition, shelter, in that order. Everything else becomes negotiable. You've negotiated away dignity, Jex asked. I'm recycling wastewater and burning equipment for warmth. Dignity left 6 weeks ago and hasn't returned my calls. But I'm alive. I've completed groundbreaking scientific work, and I've proven Kirith 9 isn't unsurvivable. It's just really committed to being inhospitable. The shuttle had become an impromptu conference room where 3 beings contemplated philosophical implications of a human who'd simply declined to die when the universe suggested it. We should extract him, Kessa said, conviction eroded. He's clearly not in distress, Jex countered. He's thriving on Kirith 9. That's not a sentence that should be possible. Marcus had returned to his fire, adding synthesized fuel with practiced ease. Through viewports they watched him work efficiently despite hostile environment. He volunteered for this, Kessa said, consulting her datapad. The assignment posting explicitly stated high fatality probability and suitable only for candidates with extreme environment experience and concerning lack of self-preservation instinct. He applied within an hour. Why? Sex asked the universe. Why would any species deliberately seek environments designed to kill them? Because they're there? Marcus's voice crackled through communications. That's the usual answer. Humans see hostile environments and think, but I could probably survive that though. It's not logical. It's barely sane. But it's gotten us to 6-star systems and counting. Sex activated external communications. You understand your survival here represents significant challenge to established scientific understanding. The Galactic Habitability Index will need revision. Multiple academic disciplines require reassessment. Cool. Does that mean I get a bonus? It means you've created a bureaucratic nightmare consuming hours of committee meetings. Less cool. But I'll take it. Marcus stood stretching comfortably. So here's the thing. I'm done with survey work, but I'm not actually in distress. The beacon activation was for scheduled extraction, which you've now provided. But I've got this whole setup working really well. I've proven sustainable survival is possible. And there are 4 more geological sites I'd love to examine if time permits. Silence descended, the kind suggesting everyone was reconsidering life choices. You want to stay, Kessa said. On Kirith 9. Voluntarily. After we arrived to rescue you. I mean, rescue is strong. Provide transportation options is more accurate. Marcus gestured around his camp. I've got another month of supplies if I ration carefully. The shelter's stable. Water system works. And scientific opportunities here are unprecedented. Shex felt duty and logic engaging in physical combat. Your species does this regularly. Just decides deadly planets aren't actually deadly, and extends your stay. There's a human researcher who spent 14 months on a tidally locked Mercury world. Another team spent 3 years in cave systems on high-gravity planets because they were having fun with geology. We've got people who vacation in environments that would kill most species within hours. Marcus's tone carried matter-of-fact acknowledgement of collective insanity. Humans are really good at two things: adapting to places that don't want us, and refusing to leave once we've adapted. This is going to require so many forms, Kessa muttered. The Terran Survey Corps has formed TSC 847, voluntary extension of assignment in environments classified as unsuitable for biological presence. I've got a digital copy. You have an official form for this. Gix laughed, because the alternative was screaming. Your species created bureaucratic infrastructure for voluntarily staying in places that should kill you. Well, yeah, it happens often enough that paperwork became necessary. Marcus began banking his fire. Look, I appreciate you coming. The beacon was working as intended. Scheduled extraction, not emergency. If you want to mark this mission complete and head out, I'll contact you in another month when I'm actually ready to leave. Absolutely not. Gix surprised himself with firmness. If I return and report I left a human on Kirith 9 voluntarily, I'll be subjected to psychological evaluation, possibly indefinitely. Fair point. Marcus considered. Alternative, you could stay for a meal. I can't offer much. Ration bars are depressing, but I've been working on a heated beverage synthesized from processed organic compounds that's almost certainly non-toxic. Tastes horrible, but it's warm. And they're on a planet classified as fundamentally incompatible with biological presence. Captain Gix found himself accepting a dinner invitation from a human who'd built fire where none should burn. The meal consisted of ration bars heated using impossible fire, supplemented by what Marcus optimistically called tea, but tasted like industrial solvent filtered through regret. They sat in Marcus's shelter while wind screamed outside, and they talked about mineral compositions and survey techniques, and the bizarre human tendency to treat unsurvivable conditions as inconvenient suggestions. The thing about shelter, Marcus said, sipping terrible tea with appreciation, is that it's not really about physical structure. Shelter is what you build, literal or metaphorical, that lets you survive when everything says you shouldn't. Humans are good at that. Building shelter in storms, making fire in cold, finding ways to keep going when the universe is pretty clear about wanting us to stop. They left Kirith 9 6 hours later, shuttle ascending through atmosphere that remained hostile and unforgiving. Marcus stayed behind, waving from beside his impossible fire, ready to spend another month cataloging geological wonders and casually violating every principle of environmental science. The rescue that wasn't a rescue would generate 47 forms, 6 committee meetings, and complete revision of the Galactic Habitability Index's classification system. Kirith 9 would be reclassified from unsuitable for biological presence to survivable with extreme human stubbornness. And somewhere in the outer terminus sector, on a frozen world that killed everything it touched, a fire continued burning, fed by determination, maintained through improvisation, and existing purely because one human had looked at impossible conditions and decided they were merely inconvenient. The universe had rules. Humans had decided those rules were more like guidelines, and occasionally, when they built fire where none should burn, the universe simply shrugged and let them get on with it,